This book you're familiar with. It is, of course, Gravity Falls Lost Legends. Released in 2018, this was the show's first, and so far only, graphic novel. Since then, the book has gone on to be a classic and a must-read book, even if I personally think the stories still have a lot to be desired. There were two variants published. The regular version, which has 144 pages and contained the 4 stories that were in the book, and a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition that had 16 extra behind-the-scene pages. This second version has now sadly been discontinued and is hard to come by on the secondhand market. However, what both these versions of LL have in common is that they are hardcover releases. Lost Legends was always a hardcover book. Apart from maybe some foreign copies, there is only hardcover copies of this book, and certainly not a paperback version. Right? As it turns out, there is indeed a paperback copy of Gravity Falls Lost Legends. So let's figure out what this is all about. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, so what? There's a paperback copy of Lost Legends. Why does that matter? Well, it's because technically speaking, this book should not even exist. See, back in July 2017 when Alex Hurst first revealed that there was going to be a Gravity Falls graphic novel at D23, the listings that were available to pre-order the book from stated that there would be a hardcover and a paperback version of the book being made. The paperback version was of course going to be cheaper and therefore more affordable for some. I remember several people pre-ordering the paperback version of Lost Legends specifically at the time, though back then we didn't even know what the book's name was yet. However, as the months passed, the paperback option for the book began to vanish off listings for it on bookstores. Then, on the 15th of February 2018, the 2-year anniversary of Gravity Falls ending and the day Alex would reveal the name and the cover for the book via the Puzzling Pines event, all remaining paperback listings for it were removed, and it was confirmed it was only going to be a hardcover release. This meant that everyone who pre-ordered a paperback copy now had to pre-order a hardcover instead. Hell, I was even planning to pre-order the paperback option myself as it was the cheaper option, but I had been holding back because I was waiting for the cover and name to be revealed before I did. After this happened though, I ended up just pre-ordering the hardcover like everyone else, as by then it was the only option of course to buy. Side note, never pre-order a Gravity Falls book from Chapters Indigo. They screwed up my order big time, and it took over a week past the release date to arrive, and given people were sending me spoilers against my request at the time, I ended up having to buy one in-store to avoid that. And by then, I couldn't even cancel the pre-order as it already shipped, and because of some policy, you couldn't do that. So that's why I now own 2 copies of the regular standard edition of Lost Legends. But anyways, as the release of Lost Legends and hype for it came and went, so did the memory of there ever being a paperback option. Apart from some possibly foreign releases of the book, there were no known paperback copies ever made, and especially none in English, as we all originally thought there was going to be when it was first available to pre-order. But that all changed in 2023. Like most stories about obscure Gravity Falls merch I have as of late, I learned about the story on the DatGFN Discord server, linked to join the description below. Back in October, my friend Space Owl posted on the server about finding a paperback version of Lost Legends at a secondhand bookstore. Asking for more pics of it, we determined that it had all the official Disney copyright info on it, which listed it as being a 2019 release, rather than a 2018 release, alongside more differences which we'll discuss later on in the video. Now, as you can imagine, I was surprised by this revelation as paperback copies of Lost Legends should technically not exist. So, how the heck was there one randomly in a secondhand bookstore? Specifically, I had 3 questions about this all. Was this a real Gravity Falls book made by Disney or a bootleg? If real, where did it come from and who was it sold by? And then, why does it even exist in the first place? Answering the first question was important, as the whole question is why would Disney books make this paperback Lost Legends? If this was just a well-made bootleg, then there's no need to investigate this more, as it's just a cheaply made fake copy by someone trying to make a quick buck. And given the GF box set has had a history of fake copies being sold too, it's no surprise therefore that Lost Legends could have fakes circulating around as well. So we needed to know if this was real. We all did some deeper digging, and to my surprise, we found some people on eBay selling paperback Lost Legends too, and they looked very much like the one on the bookstore but just in varying condition. so it seemed as though there were more copies of this book than just this one. But we still needed to determine if it's real. This was later confirmed by doing a simple check of the book's ISBN number. Searching it up resulted in another variant of Lost Legends being shown. This copy was listed as being published in 2019. Compared to Lost Legends' original ISBN, you can see the differences quite clearly. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we found international paperback copies were indeed sold in places like the Latin American market and even in Turkey. They don't get as much attention or press as the main hardcover releases do, so that's maybe why so few knew about them, and those who did didn't think much of it. All those books on eBay also had the same ISBN number and in turn, confirmed they were legit. These were real paperback copies of Lost Legends made by Disney Books, not well-made bootlegs. With that in mind, I decided to buy one of the paperback copies in better condition off eBay, partly because I wanted to see this for myself, partly because I originally was going to order this version of the book beforehand, before I knew that the hardcover was the only option left, and partly because after buying the Barnes & Noble exclusive of Lost Legends a few years earlier, I figured why not round up my Lost Legends copies to an even 4, because, you can never have too many Lost Legends, right?
Oh, what am I doing with my life?
As I waited for my order to ship, and with confirmation of the first question being made, I still had 2 more questions left to answer. Where were these paperback copies even sold, and why were they even made in the first place? You cannot just order a paperback Lost Legends off Amazon or B&N or any other bookstore. There doesn't seem to be any other seller beyond eBay sellers who have them. So who is responsible for selling all these books in the first place? I decided to ask the community and made a post about it on my channel, and the response I got on it basically explained everything. It turned out that a lot of people owned the paperback Lost Legends, and apart from a few people saying they got it secondhand or mistaking it for the hardcover, the most common answer I got for where people had gotten their copies from was none other than the Scholastic Book Fair. I probably don't need to tell you what that is. We've all probably got our memories from when the Scholastic Book Fair visited our elementary school and then we begged our parents to give us enough money to buy that book or poster we wanted so badly. And if not, then you've probably seen it being listed in those early 2000s compilations made by nostalgia accounts on Instagram or TikTok that bait you into thinking that the 2000s were a far better decade than they actually were.
And as with anybody looking back on their childhood, they see those simpler, better times. But these were not simpler times. A lot of the negative events that occurred in the 2010s were simply aftershocks from the cluster that was the 2000s.
The revelation that many fans had gotten the book from there was quite surprising, but the more I looked into it, the more it seemed that this was not unique to Lost Legends alone. It turned out that many normally hardcover-only books have had paperback exclusives sold by Scholastic. The example I noticed being mentioned the most was Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Normally those books are hardcover only, but on Scholastic's website and I guess book fairs too, you can get paperback versions of them. And before you ask, yes, I did look to see if the Scholastic website had the book available, and no it didn't. In fact, despite searching through many old catalogs and listings, I could not find a single one that had Lost Legends or any Gravity Falls book at that being listed as available to buy at any point in time. So I'm gonna have to go off the word of the community post replies on these originating from there. I mean, with how many different people responded, I don't think that they're lying, and if so, then this is a weird and specific thing to lie about. So that in turn answers the 3 questions from the start. Yes, the paperback copy of Lost Legends is indeed legit made by Disney. The origin of all these books is very likely the Scholastic Book Fair, and the reason they even exist is because Scholastic often makes paperback exclusives of normally hardcover-only books, probably to give the students who they target to a cheaper option by which to buy a book they otherwise may not be able to afford if it was only hardcover. And in fact, this reminded me of yet another case of a Gravity Falls book that technically should not exist, that somehow found its way for sale to a similar avenue. Back in the mid to late 2010s, God that made me feel old, Disney was making these things called Gravity Falls Sign Stories or Scene Stories. Basically, these were something they did with shows at the time where they would take the episodes and put them into a comic book format. Gravity Falls had about 4 officially made that retold the first 12 episodes in comic book form, with another 4 being made to retell the shorts with a compilation book later on made too. In 2018, there was apparently a Weirdmageddon sign story being made too that would be a retelling of all 3 episodes of Weirdmageddon. Originally planned to be a hardcover release in September of 2018, it was pushed back to September of 2019, a full year later. But by that time, Joe Books, the company that made the Sign Story books for Disney, went bust, and the book was cancelled. I guess you could say it was therefore Joe over for the Sign Story books and Joe Books themselves, eh?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyways, despite Joe Books going bankrupt and the Weirdmageddon Sign Story being cancelled, I remember even in 2018, seeing posts on Gravity Falls LEMMiNO about people getting their hands on the paperback version of the book, and as it turns out, hardcovers were even still made of the book by foreign publishers. And take a guess where all the people who got the paperback Weirdmageddon Sign Story said it came from. Yup, book fairs. Though the OPs never stated exactly which book fair it came from, I would not be surprised if it ended up being the Scholastic Book Fair because, I mean, can you really think of any other book fairs done by other publishers? I ended up buying a copy of it myself after being tipped off about new condition books being sold on thrift books, and I can confirm that the paperback Weirdmageddon Sign Story is indeed real. It's quite a weird feeling, honestly, as I'm holding a book that should not even technically exist. But you get the idea. Scholastic seems to have a history of selling Gravity Falls books that by all means should not exist. Going back to the Paperback Lost Legends, I did mention earlier in the video that I bought a copy myself, and after a few weeks, it arrived, and here it is. Now, first thing of course you'll notice is that this is much smaller than the regular books, obviously given it's a paperback. Another thing you'll notice is that on the paperback's cover, it says New York Times bestseller in yellow text, which doesn't appear on my hardcover copy. Now, this isn't anything exclusive to the paperback, as all new editions of Lost Legends, including the hardcover since 2019, now say that the book is a bestseller after it became one during the summer of 2018. The reason none of my hard copies say it is simply because it's an older copy, specifically a pre-order release copy. So it was made before the book was a bestseller, and so doesn't say that, as well as having some other exclusive aspects to it we'll get to in a bit. This is the same case as with earlier copies of Journal 3 compared to later releases, as older ones don't say it's a bestseller while new ones do. With that said, moving around to the back, they did maintain the same Bill Cipher image thing that appears inside the light from the drawing of Ford's flashlight from the hardcover, which is kinda cool. And speaking of the back, it's where you'll see a lot of the differences. Starting from the top, it says that the book is $9.99 in the US and $12.99 in Canada, and given despite buying this for $6 off eBay the shipping costs were way more, this line is all the more forever true. But it's the next part that's different. On the hardcover copies, there's a series of reviews for Lost Legends from other series creators, those being Craig McCracken and Patrick McHale, also Schmebulock himself. However, on the paperback, it's a mixed up synopsis that combines Alex Hirsch's message to readers on the hardcover's inner jacket flap and the online summary of the book you can find on sites where you can buy it. Rather strange, but also I guess given without a jacket on which to write that, they had to put it on the back and remove those reviews. Finally, the book's barcodes obviously have different ISBNs, and the bottom copyright stuff is also somewhat varying. On the hardcover, it says that it's copyright 2018, while on the paperback it says copyright 2019, as well as adding in the credit to the designer of the cover. The final set of differences can be found inside the book. Alongside the inner parts of the cover being white compared to the black ones of the hardcover, there's a slight difference in terms of the stuff written in the credits page. Alongside saying copyright 2019, the biggest difference is the definitive date for when this paperback was made. Like on the hardcover, it says the first hardcover edition was from July 2018. But then it also says that the first paperback edition was from August 2019. And with that, we now know that this book was published in August of 2019, over a full year after the release of Lost Legends. No wonder no one knew it existed. It was released well after the hype for the book had died down and most people had moved on to other things. I certainly probably didn't hear about it given that month of that year. I was probably busy getting ready for my first year of university and obsessing over the first season of Infinity Train. Back when we all thought that show had a bright future ahead. But you get the point. This book was quietly released and just forgotten about. Some people probably bought it at book fairs and that was it. Now, beyond that, there's not really any other differences between the paperback and the hardcover. They both just retell the same 4 stories as you'd expect. The only difference is, again, one that even the newer hardcover copies have, and that is the fact that Slenderman, who is clearly identifiable in the older release day hardcovers, is now censored and has a mouth, a red suit instead of a black one, and no tentacles like the original version has. There's never been a clear reason given as to why this change happened, but I assume it's copyright related and it's just Disney now wanting to pay for the rights to use Slenderman in the book. But anyways, that about sums up everything. So to reiterate, the story at hand is that in October, one of my friends found a second-hand copy of Gravity Falls Lost Legends for sale. However, it was a paperback copy which should not even exist, as there were never plans for one to be made and early listings of it being removed. This leads me down to a rabbit hole of learning that from other people who do own a copy, that in August of 2019, Disney Books did end up making a paperback copy of Lost Legends, which is apparently only sold at the Scholastic Book Fair because Scholastic seems to sell paperback exclusives or normally hardcover only books. And because of this, many people likely got copies from when the book fair visited their schools, and now years later, all that remains are fans who own a copy and are unaware of the rarity of it, and a couple that occasionally appear for sale on eBay. What amazes me about this all is how despite it being over 5 years since Lost Legends came out, we're still learning so much about it. And despite my issues with the book, I do have a soft spot for it, due to it being something that kept me with the GF fandom as we waited for it to release. The wait for Lost Legends ended up being what kept me with Gravity Falls and allowed me to grow what began a small obsession into what we have today. And now we're once again living that same experience as we wait for the Book of Build to release in July. It's like that wait for Lost Legends all over again. And yeah, it does make me feel nostalgic. Who knows? Maybe there will be a paperback copy of that book too, and in 2025 there will be a new generation of Gravity Falls fans finding a copy of the Book of Build for sale when the Scholastic Book Fair is at their school. And thus, the cycle will repeat. Gravity Falls may be long over, but it always will have something new to give. Be it a new book, or a new mystery about a previously thought to be impossible version of that book. In the end though, I am happy to now say I own a paperback copy of Lost Legends. It's not really a bragging right, but it's what 2017 me was planning to buy, and now 2023 me has fulfilled that goal. And I guess that's what life is all about. Fulfilling goals that you had when you were younger, when you're older. Or maybe not, what do I know, I make videos about an almost 12-year-old Disney Channel cartoon. But with that said, that was the odd story of the paperback copy of Gravity Falls Lost Legends. This has been another That GFN Presents video, and thank you for watching.